Hey, welcome back to the Brew channel. I'm Mike.
And I'm Joey.
And today we're going to be going through a 5-gallon Blue Moon clone called Lunar Shock by MoreBeer. So sit back and relax and we'll show you how it's done.
In today's episode, this kit brings a total of 6 pounds of 2-row grains, 1 pound of flaked oats, 5 pounds of white wheat grains, 1.7 grams of coriander seeds, 2 ounces of sweet orange peels, and I apologize if I mispronounce this, 1 ounce of Hydrometer hops. On today's episode, we're going to need a few things: a mixing spoon, hop spider, a stock pot, and a Wort Chiller.
We'll also need our hydrometer, a spray bottle for easy sanitation, a fermenter with airlock, and we'll also be using our Anvil Foundry. So for the Anvil Foundry, we're going to fill this up with 6.1 gallons of water, and then we're going to put aside another gallon of water for the sparge. So we filled up our Anvil Foundry with 6.1 gallons for the strike water. Now we want it to be at 165 degrees Fahrenheit. We set the power to 100%, and at 120 volts, that took us about an hour. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and start our mashing. We're gonna start off with our white wheat. Joey's gonna help by stirring this in. Now we're gonna do this slowly to make sure that we're not getting any clumps. Go ahead, Joey, you can start stirring. So we ended up doing a wheat beer a couple brews back. We noticed for the ones that Jeff and I were drinking, they were a little bit watery. So we decided to try a different recipe where it's using almost double the grain bill and double the orange peel. So we're hoping that this one is going to come out a little bit more of a heavier body. Alrighty, so this grain build does not have a lot of flaked oat, but the grain build itself, as we were mashing it in, it felt pretty thick. So I'm going to go ahead and add a bit of rice hulls just to help with the circulation. We definitely don't want to get a stuck mash. Joey, if you want to stir that in. We're not going to use that much. The rice hulls just pretty much make sure that you don't get a stuck mash. So as you're stirring that in, I'm going to go ahead and start mixing in our flaked oats. So typically flaked oats, that's where you usually get your problem with the stuck mash. So for the flaked oats, that's usually your problem with the stuck mash. This gives it more of a consistency of like an oatmeal. So you can see where that may be trouble for when you're trying to do the circulation. Okay, so we're going to get ready for the pre-circulation. So starting off, we're going to turn the temperature down to 152. And then we're going to set the power down to 50%. I'm going to give it a good stir. And then we're going to allow this to steep between 10 to 20 minutes.
Okay, so now we're going to start the circulation process. And we're going to want this between 145 and 158 degrees. And we also want the power between 50 to 80%. So we're going to set the power here. We're going to set it at that power is because we don't want the fan to always run. Okay, so now we're going to give this a quick stir real quick right before we set up the pump. Let's place this lid here. Place the other lid. Grab the hose. And you want to make sure the valve is open. And then turn on the pump. And then we just want this at a slow, medium pour. And just to make sure it doesn't overflow. Okay, so this is going to go for 1 hour. And every 15 minutes, we're going to stir. And lastly, 20 minutes left in this process, we're going to start our sparge water.
All right, so our sparge water is getting ready to be set to 170. So what we're going to go ahead and do is turn up the anvil to 170. And we're going to set the power to 100%. All right, so once it gets 170, we're going to let it rest for 10 minutes. And what that's going to do is it's going to loosen up and release the rest of the sugars that are in your grain. So that way when we're doing the sparge, it's going to make it easier for that sugar to come through. All right, so we went ahead, we turned off the pump for the circulation, we turned off the unit. Now what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to lift up our malt pipe. We're going to let this drain out. And after this drains, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take our sparge water. So we have our sparge water, and we're going to go ahead with the malt pipe. As you can see, we have the lid with a bunch of tiny holes that's going to be able to distribute the water evenly across. And what this is basically doing, like I said before, we're going to grab whatever extra sugars are left over. So our sparge water should be matching, and this should be at 170.
Okay, so we're going to start the boiling process. We're going to power this on. And we're going to hit power. And we're going to set the power to 100%. The temperature, we're going to set it at 212. All right, so once it reaches up to temperature of 212, the boil point, we're going to let this run for 1 hour. Okay, so now that we've started the boiling point, we're going to put in our first set of hops. And then in the last 10 minutes of the boil, we're going to put in our sweet orange peels and the coriander powder. Okay, so we're going to turn off the unit, and anything touching the wort from this point on needs to be sanitized. And we're going to want to reduce the temperature down to between 60 to 70 degrees because we don't want to kill the yeast.
Okay, so we cooled our wort down, and we're going to be able to take our hydrometer reading. So let's start. We went ahead and attached our hop spider so that we can filter out anything that was left over. So we're going to hit the valve. It's going to start pouring in. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and sanitize our scissors and yeast. And then we're going to add our US-05 ale yeast. And next, we're going to go ahead and aerate the wort by shaking the bottle for about a minute. This is basically adding oxygen to the wort. At a high level, this is allowing the yeast to grow and multiply, so the new yeast can then eat up the sugar and create alcohol. But just be careful because shaking for too long can cause oxidation, which will add some off flavors to your beer, which will then make your beer pretty much taste like cardboard, and you're probably going to want to toss it out. All right, so we already have our airlock on, and we're going to let this sit in a cool, dark place for about 14 days. And once that's completed, you're going to go ahead, you can bottle it up. You'll let that sit for another 2 weeks. Then you'll be able to drink your beer. All right, so we just wrapped up that Lunar Shock beer from MoreBeer. If you like what you saw, please like and subscribe. Call us out if you saw that we did anything wrong, said anything wrong. It could only help us grow. But either way, we'll see you next time. Peace.
Uh-oh.
Action.
Mulberry moon delight. Mulberry moon delight. All right, I'm sorry. Come to Puerto Rico.
Yeah, they could get an endorsement from Arnold.
I love the palm trees.
Cigars. Coconuts.
Have you ever snapped a coconut with your hands?
I could see him slapping 2 coconuts together and just drinking them.
Yeah.